When we talk about Oscar-worthy performances, we tend to think in narrow terms: intimate dramas, minimal spectacle, and self-contained narratives. What Robert Downey Jr. achieves in Avengers Endgame challenges that framework entirely. This performance is not defined by scale, action, or special effects. It is defined by accumulation. Over 11 years and 22 films, Downey constructs a character whose defining traits, intelligence, confidence, and foresight, slowly transform into sources of psychological strain. Endgame is not a sudden turn, it is a reckoning. What makes this performance exceptional is specificity. Downey does not play a hero at the end of his journey. He plays the weight of remembered failure, unresolved guilt, and long-held fear finally proven real. The acting is not broad, it is surgical. This presentation argues that Downey's work meets every traditional Academy criterion: emotional truth, narrative completion, and restraint. The only reason it was overlooked is where it exists, inside franchise cinema. But if acting is about revealing human truth, then the genre should not disqualify the achievement. What sets Downey's performance apart is not just what happens in Endgame, but what precedes it. This is a rare example of sustained character psychology across more than a decade of storytelling. From the beginning, Tony Stark's arrogance functioned as armor. Downey established confidence as a defense mechanism, not a personality quirk. His humor masked anxiety, his intellect anticipated disaster, his ego controlled fear. Across the Marvel saga, these traits are slowly reframed. The Battle of New York introduces trauma, Ultron introduces guilt, Infinity War introduces failure. Downey carries each of these experiences forward, never resetting the character to baseline. By Endgame, Tony Stark is no longer reacting to events. He is living with memory. Downey plays that history through posture, pacing, and emotional economy. Nothing is overwritten. Nothing is forgotten. This is long-form acting at a level rarely attempted in cinema. Downey honors continuity while still delivering transformation. The performance requires the audience to remember alongside him, and he trusts them to do so. Few actors are asked to sustain this kind of psychological coherence. Fewer still succeed. The opening of Endgame immediately signals a different kind of performance. Tony Stark is introduced not as a savior, but as a survivor. Downey's physicality tells the story before dialogue does. His body is diminished. His movements are slower. His voice lacks the rhythm and confidence that once defined him. This is not Tony Stark stripped of power. It is Tony Stark hollowed out. When he confronts Steve Rogers, Downey avoids ideological argument. The anger is not political, it is personal. He plays betrayal as grief looking for structure. The scene works because it feels intimate rather than rhetorical. Equally important is what Downey chooses not to play. Peter Parker's death is never expressed through overt mourning. Instead, it appears in silence, deflection, and emotional withdrawal. This restraint mirrors real trauma, where naming the loss feels unbearable. Downey reframes Tony's paranoia as hypervigilance that failed. The defining flaw of the character, his inability to stop imagining catastrophe, has finally been validated. The performance communicates not triumph, but devastation. This is acting rooted in psychological realism, not superhero mythology. One of the most remarkable aspects of Downey's performance is how he carries trauma forward without ever announcing it. The Battle of New York is never replayed in dialogue, but it lives in Tony's nervous system. Downey plays it as a persistent state of alertness, an inability to ever feel safe. This trauma becomes the lens through which Tony experiences every subsequent failure. In Endgame, Downey does not revisit this trauma directly. Instead, he allows it to inform Tony's worldview. The future Tony once feared has arrived. The apocalypse he imagined has happened. What makes this effective is Downey's refusal to externalize the pain. He internalizes it. His performance suggests that the worst consequence of trauma is not fear, it is exhaustion. Tony Stark is no longer afraid of losing. He is tired of surviving. This choice aligns with the Academy's most respected dramatic performances, which privilege implication over exposition. Downey trusts the audience to recognize the cumulative weight without spelling it out. By doing so, he elevates the material beyond genre convention and into character study. When Tony builds a life with Pepper and Morgan, Downey introduces a new emotional register: conditional peace. This happiness is not naive. Downey plays it with restraint and vigilance. His joy is genuine, but always accompanied by an awareness that it could disappear instantly. Love has not freed Tony, it has exposed him. This is why Tony's refusal to rejoin the Avengers initially feels earned. Downey does not play this moment as moral weakness. He plays it as a man protecting the only thing he cannot rebuild. The tension between domestic peace and cosmic responsibility becomes the emotional center of the film. Downey communicates that Tony understands exactly what heroism will cost him this time. This is an inversion of the superhero arc. Power no longer isolates Tony, love does. His armor once kept the world out. Now, family keeps the world at bay. Downey allows the audience to feel the weight of that choice. It is not selfishness, it is fear informed by experience. That nuance is the mark of serious dramatic acting. When the Academy recognizes a performance, it consistently returns to three core principles: emotional truth, narrative completion, and restraint. By these standards, Robert Downey Jr.'s work in Avengers: Endgame qualifies unequivocally. First, emotional truth. Downey never signals emotion for effect. Tony Stark's grief, anger, and acceptance emerge organically from lived experience rather than dramatic emphasis. Nothing is performed at the audience. Instead, Downey allows the character's psychology to dictate every choice, creating a sense that each moment is inevitable rather than engineered. Second, narrative completion. This performance is not isolated. It resolves an 11-year character arc with remarkable discipline. Downey honors every prior version of Tony Stark while allowing the character to evolve beyond them. The result is not reinvention, but resolution. Few actors are asked to conclude a role of this magnitude with such continuity, and fewer still succeed. Third, restraint. Where earlier films relied on charisma and velocity, Endgame demands stillness. Downey communicates Tony's final transformation through silence, posture, and micro-expression. This is the language of prestige acting, trusting the audience to feel rather than be told. Measured against the Academy's own standards, this performance meets and exceeds the bar. When Tony realizes that he alone can end the conflict, Downey plays the moment without grandeur. There is no hesitation, no speech, no dramatics. What we see instead is recognition. Downey communicates that Tony has already done the calculation. This is not bravery, it is inevitability. The clarity on his face tells us that the decision was made long before the moment arrived. The absence of ego is key. Earlier versions of Tony might have framed this as heroism. Downey strips it of self-importance. The choice feels quiet, private, and terminal. The snap itself is not framed as victory. Downey ensures we understand it as completion, the end of a long moral equation that has been running since New York. This restraint transforms what could have been spectacle into character resolution. It is not about saving the universe, it is about fulfilling responsibility. That distinction is what makes the performance resonate beyond genre. Pepper's final words work because Downey has spent the entire saga proving that Tony cannot rest. Tony Stark is a man cursed by awareness. He cannot stop thinking, planning, or preparing for catastrophe. Downey has carried that burden for 11 years. In this moment, Pepper is not just saying goodbye, she is granting permission. Downey's expression reflects release rather than fear. The performance communicates that Tony's greatest struggle was never sacrifice, but surrender. This is why the ending feels peaceful rather than tragic. Downey has convinced us that death is not Tony's punishment, it is his relief. The emotional payoff lands because it has been earned through accumulation, restraint, and psychological consistency. Few performances manage this level of narrative closure. Fewer still do so without sentimentality. This is the moment where character acting becomes catharsis. The lack of Oscar recognition reflects institutional limitation, not artistic failure. First, genre bias. Superhero films are still perceived as commercial products rather than artistic vehicles, regardless of individual performances. Second, discomfort with serialized storytelling. The Academy struggles to evaluate long-form acting because it challenges traditional assessment models. Third, the paradox of success. Endgame's cultural dominance worked against it, reinforcing the false divide between popularity and quality. Finally, the absence of an aggressive acting campaign mattered. Awards recognition often follows advocacy as much as merit. Together, these factors created a blind spot, one where excellence was acknowledged culturally but ignored institutionally. Great performances do more than win awards. They endure. Downey's Tony Stark resonates because he represents something universal: the cost of foresight, the exhaustion of responsibility, and the relief of letting go. He made a man in a metal suit feel profoundly human. This performance meets every standard the Academy claims to value: emotional authenticity, narrative completion, and disciplined restraint. Its exclusion reveals not its weakness, but the limitations of the system judging it. Robert Downey Jr. did not simply conclude a franchise. He completed a psychological portrait 11 years in the making. That is not spectacle. That is not genre acting. That is acting at the highest level. If you found this video interesting, give it a like and a comment. Thank you.